Hello guys, and welcome back to my channel. When you implement an API, you might need to have a bulk insert. Bulk insert means that you want to insert many objects at the same time. Let's take a student as example. So let's say that you have an endpoint to save a student. So how would you implement when you want to insert many students at the same time? Okay, you might answer, I would request a list of students, but imagine providing a JSON object containing hundreds or even thousands of students. This is not easy to implement, and it's not easy to write, but there is a better format to do that. We talk about CSV files. So you can have a list or a file containing your list of students, containing the different columns, and even you want to pick some of them. For example, you have first name, last name, age, and you have a bunch of other information, and you want just to save a student based on the first name, last name, and age. So in this video, I will guide you step by step how to implement this functionality. This means I will show you how you can import a CSV file and persist it into the database. So this will be the topic of today's video. Also, if you want to learn more and more in deep the Spring framework, and if you want to land your dream job, I would like to invite you to have a look on the new course that I released recently. It will guide you step by step, and it will teach you how to master the Spring framework one by one. And it will start from the theory to the practice, and everything will be really in practice with so many examples. This course covers so many topics like Spring Core, Spring Beans, dependency injections, DTO patterns, REST APIs, services, and so on and so forth. And of course, we did not forget the best part and the most important part in the software development industry, which is testing. So in this course, you will learn how to isolate your services with unit testing using Mockito and mock all the objects, so no need to inject the real objects. And also, we did not forget the Spring context part. There you will learn how to use the Spring context in order to implement tests. And this will help you also write end-to-end tests for your application. And finally, I want to remind you that I'm offering a 30% discount for the first 500 students that will enroll in this course. So don't miss the opportunity and take your knowledge about the Spring framework to the next level. And I'm pretty sure this is going to help you land your dream job. So now, before we start, if you're new to my channel, hit the subscribe button and join me and learn a lot about technology. Don't forget, sharing is caring, so hit that thumbs up button so we can help this video reach more and more people, and let's spread the knowledge together. Now, I'm gonna leave you to it, so let's dive into today's topic. The source code of this demo application is available in my GitHub repo. So all you need to do is to search for Ali-Bo-Ali in GitHub, and you will land on my profile, and then go to repositories. And all you need to do is to search for file, and you will find this Spring Boot file upload repo, and then you will have the source code available there. Also, I would like to invite you again to check my YouTube channel and also check the playlists where you can have multiple videos and multiple tutorials really useful and available for you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button again. All right, so now let's go ahead and first let me introduce to you the context of our application. So what we will be building in this tutorial is just uploading a list of students using a CSV file. So what we have here, we have an entity student containing ID, first name, last name, and age. And we have the corresponding layers, which is first we have the student service, which is not yet implemented. We also have the student repository, and we have our student controller. So I just created the 3 layers of our application, and then we will implement the methods one by one and step by step. All right, also I just prepared the configuration for the database. So here we have a database called file upload, and this is the connection, and this is all the properties. Also, as you can see here in this pom.xml file, I also introduced the OpenAPI documentation, and as you can see it in here, so we have here this our Swagger UI. Alright, now let's go back to our code and let's start adding the first dependency that will help us uploading and reading a CSV file. So the first thing, just here in the pom.xml, let's add a new dependency, and the artifact ID is called OpenCSV, and it's this one, and the package is com.opencsv. And here the version you can use the version which is the latest available now, which is 5.7.1. And don't forget to hit that button to reload the project, or just right click in here and then Maven and then reload project in order to download all the required dependencies that we have or that we will update or add each time. Alright, so now first we have our dependency ready to use. So the next step is we need to prepare the endpoint to upload the file. So I will go to the student controller right here, and I'm going to make this one full screen, and I will create the first endpoint, which will be a post mapping, because we need or we want to upload a file of students or a CSV file of containing the list of students, and then I will just call it /upload, for example. You can leave it as it is, but I will just call it upload. And then we will have a public and then response entity, and this response entity will be of type integer, and the integer will be just how many students or how many lines have we imported into our database. And then I will say upload students, for example, and this upload students will require one entry. So first we have our request part, and then let's give it a name file, for example, and it will be of type multi-part file, and I will call it file. Also, there is something super important here in this post mapping. We need to tell Spring that this endpoint consumes an object of type multi-part /file form data. So this equals, and we can provide a list, and then we have multi-part /form -data. So this is what will be consuming for this endpoint. And then let's continue implementing our method, and all I need to do is just return a response entity.ok, and then I will use my service right here. So I will just inject it, private final student service, and I will call it just service as a short name, and here I will just call service.upload file or upload students, just to be consistent, and here I will pass the file as parameter. So then let's create this method, upload student, and it will return an integer, and it will take a multi-part file as a parameter. So now let's go ahead and start implementing these upload student methods. So the first thing I will do, I will create a set of students, and I will call it students, for example, equals, and I will create a method, I will call it parse CSV. Parse CSV file, or just parse CSV, and I will pass the file as parameter. So then let's create this method, parse CSV, and it should return a set of students. And then what we need to do, we need to read the file and then go through the file line by line and map it. But for that, we will be using the OpenCSV dependency, and then let me show you step by step how we can do that. So here I will use a try with resources. So I will use try, and then I will have a reader from java.io, and I will call it reader equals new buffer reader, new buffered reader. And then I will pass as an input new input stream, the new input stream reader of my file.getInputStream. So here this one might throw an exception. So let's add a catch clause, or let's also use add exception method signature. So this method will throw an IO exception. So we will add it later on in here. So then after reading the file, what we need to do, we need to create an object of type header colon name mapping strategy. So this will be the strategy of reading our CSV file. So here we have an object of type header colon name mapping strategy, and this class is a generic class. So here we need to provide an object that will represent the header of our CSV file. Later on, I will explain to you how a CSV. So let's create here a CSV, for example. So I will use plain text. So the CSV will be something like that. So we will have the header as a first name and then last name, for example, and then we will have age. And then the data will be Ali, for example, the comma, Bo Ali, and comma, for example, 20. And then the next line is John, and then Doe, and then, for example, 30 or something like that. So we can have it with or without spaces, and so forth. So what we are creating at this level, this header column name mapping strategy, is to map this header right here in order to know what are the columns that we want to map and we want to read from to see this CSV file. So here we can have, for example, extra info, something like that. But in case, so let's say just extra info, but I want to read only these 3 columns. All right, so this is why we need this header column name mapping strategy. And now let's go ahead and create an object. Let's call it student CSV representation. So we don't have this file yet, but we will create it in just few seconds. So let's initialize, let's call this one strategy equals, and I will break the line, new header column name mapping strategy. So we can also remove this one here. And now all I need to do is to create the student CSV representation class. So I will create it in the same package. And here in this class, what I need to do, I need to provide the attributes that I want to read from this CSV file. All right, so now all I need to do is to have, for example, a private string first name, and I will call it just F name for now, and I will explain to you why I want to do that. Then we have a private string L name for last name, and finally I will have, for example, integer or an int male. So it will be int male, sorry, not male but age. So we have here first name, last name, and age. So this is what we want to read from this CSV file. Now we need to map, or we need to bind these attributes to the header names. All right, so first let me add getters and setters for this one. So I will be using getter and then setter from Lombok, and also I can use all args and no args constructor. And also I will be using builder just in case we need to build our object. So now what we need to do, we need to tell our library, the OpenCSV, that this column represents the first name from our CSV file. And to do that, we need to use an annotation called CSV binding by name. And here all I need to do is to provide the column name, which is in our case, it will be first name. So let's copy this one and put it in here. I will duplicate it for last name. So here I will be using last name, and finally I will use age. So this one will be age. And here, as you can see, all I want to read from this CSV file, no matter how many columns I have, I want to read only the columns containing first name, last name, and age. All right. So this is what we mean by this CSV representation. All right, after doing that, or after preparing the CSV representation, now we need to tell the strategy, or to set the type of our strategy. So I will do strategy.setType, and the type is again the student CSV representation.class. Afterwards, all I need to do, we have an object called CSV to bean, and this CSV to bean, so it means that the CSV file I want to read, I will map it to a bean of type student CSV representation. All right, I will call it CSV to bean equals a new CSV to bean builder. So I will be using the builder in here, and of course what I need to pass. So let me break the line here so you can see everything. And here we need the type again. So then what I need to do, I need to pass a few parameters to this CSV builder. So I will say with mapping strategy. So I will pass the strategy that I chose for the mapping, and then I will say with ignore empty lines. So I will set it to true in case, for example, we have something like this. So we have an empty line, and then we have, for example, user something, something, something. All right, so it will ignore this empty line. And then if we go back in here, we have also ignore leading white spaces. So again, with ignore leading white spaces, we will set it to true. So white spaces in case we have something like this. All right. So then after that, let's call the build method and let's build our CSV to bean object. After that, all I need to do is to call the parse method from our CSV to bean dot parse. And then what we need to parse after parsing this file, all I need to do is to loop over it and map it to an object of type student. So here I will start stream and then map. And then all I need to do, for example, let's call it CSV line and then lambda expression. And all I need to do is to return student dot builder. And then I will provide the different attributes for my object. So first name, which is my CSV line dot get f name. So this is the because as you can see here, this parse, it will return a list of student CSV representation. And then last name, it will be a name. And we have finally age. So it will be our object age. And then of course we need to call the build method in order to build our object. So after that, all I need to do is to call the collect method and then collectors to set. All right, so here I just can ignore this return null here, and all I need to do is to return this object. So now we have our method that will parse our CSV file. So now all I need to do here is to add exception method to signature in here. And of course we need to add it to this controller. So let's go ahead and do it, since we are not, or we will not be handling exceptions. And if you want to learn and to know how to handle exceptions, I would like to invite you to watch the video that explains how to handle exception in the REST API. So here we just missed something. As you can see, the reader here is not used and we need to use it. So this reader should be used when we initiate our CSV bean builder. So here let's say reader. So because this builder will take an object of type input stream or buffered reader. All right, so now we are almost done with this. So once we get the list of students, all I need to do is just to call repository.save all, and then I need to pass the students list. And then finally, all I need to do is just return the students.size. So this will be the response or the return value of our upload student. So let me resume again what we have done so far. So first we created a parse CSV method, and it takes as a parameter a multi-part file. And then I used a try with resources to read my file. So how to read it? So I use an object reader equals new buffered reader. And then for this buffered reader, I need to pass an input stream reader, and it takes also as a parameter the file.getInputStream. Next, I initiated my strategy, how I want to read this CSV file. So I want to read it using the column name mapping strategy. And for that, I created an object, a representation that represents this one. And in order to do that, also I need to tell that this column should be, or like it's a binding for this first name or a column called first name in my CSV file. And again, so I set this strategy, I gave it the type, which is my student CSV representation class. And then I created an object of type CSV to bean. And this one, it will transform this CSV file. So for now, it's not a CSV file, but we'll create it later on. So it will transform the CSV file to a bean. And then what we did, we used the builder and we passed the reader that we have. So it's the stream of our file. And then we just passed the strategy and we passed few parameters telling that we want to ignore empty lines and we want to ignore leading white spaces. And then when I call the CSV to bean.parse, automatically it will return a list of student CSV representation. So you can also, if you want to, you can also here, instead of using this student CSV representation, you can directly use the student object. But just I don't want to mix things like having an entity which also at the same time is the representation of a CSV and all, like it will be really messy class. So that's why I created a different class right here. So then I just streamed or like looped over this list and I performed a mapping, and then I just collected my object and returned it in here. So now in this controller, what we have just calling the service.upload students, and we passed the file as a parameter. So now what we need to do is just to create a CSV file containing a list of students. So what I will be doing is just, I will copy this one, I will just clean it up, and I will use this information. So here we said Ali Bo Ali, and here also I can remove this extra info. And here, for example, let's say student 1, and then for example, student last name, and then an age, for example, let's say 22. And I will copy this one. And in here, I will just create a CSV file that I will also leave it for you in the code, so you can also use it. So I will create a new and then file. I will call it students.csv. So this is my CSV file, and I will paste the data in here. So this is our CSV file. Now let's start our application and open our Swagger UI, and let's try this out and see if everything is working fine. Also, what we can check here, I already created a database. So let me display the public schema. And here we have, after running the application, we will have our student table in here. So let's go ahead and run the application and make sure everything is working fine and that the application is running correctly. So the application is up and running. And if I refresh in here, we see that we have our student table containing age, ID, first name, and last name. So now I will go to my browser and refresh the Swagger UI interface, and then let's upload the file. All right, let's click refresh in here. So it will be refreshing the interface, and then we see that we have this endpoint. So let's click here on try it out. And as you can see, Swagger detected automatically that this is a file and I can choose the file from here. So let's go ahead and choose our CSV or students.csv file, and let's see how it's gonna behave. All right, so now I will select our student.csv file, click on open, and then I will run execute. So here, as you can see, we have a response body, and here we have 3, and the response was also okay. So let's go back to our database. I will refresh this one, and as you can see here, we have our list of students that we already created in here. So here, let's also do a second test. I will also just duplicate this one 2 times or many times, and let's say 3, 4, 5, and so forth. So now let's leave the rest as it is. I will restart the application, and then I will again import the same file and see how it's gonna behave. So let's go back to Swagger. So I will refresh the page first. Now try it out again. And let's select our student.csv, and then let's click on execute. And now we see that we have 8 as a value, and we can also double check that in the database. So here we see that we imported all these files. So this is how you can import a CSV file